But when you said you felt called to go to Nome or to go to Valdez or to loan that $10,000, can you describe that feeling?
You know, to me, it's a natural thing. It's not anything unusual. It isn't any big wild dream or anything like that. It's just a natural thing because all my life I was saved when I was 9 years old, and all my life I've depended on the leading of the Lord. Came to Alaska as a senior in high school in 1949. And my dad was a safety engineer for the Alaska Road Commission. He traveled all over Alaska. And of course, I graduated from high school, and then I went to work for Fish and Wildlife Service as a secretary. And then I went to Bible school in 1953. Met a man, and we got married.
In Alaska, or you met in Missouri?
No, in Springfield. We graduated Thursday night and got married Friday night. And came to Alaska because that's where my folks were, and we lived in Juneau for a year. He was from Missouri, but he had been up here in Fairbanks in the Army or the Air Force. He met my dad before he met me.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Is that how you met?
Pardon?
Is that how you met?
No.
Your dad introduced?
We met in Bible college.
Hmm.
He came to Bible college, and we met there. And after we got married, we came back to Alaska and lived there for a year. In the meantime, I had a daughter. And then the Lord called us to go to Nome and help the missionary there as a single lady who had the church there. Flew into Nome, and the missionary here in Fairbanks took us to Nome, and he had to leave right away because there was a bad storm coming in. And so he left, and we were left in Nome, and we lived with the missionary in the back of the church.
As mission workers, what did you do exactly?
Well, I just helped in the church and did things like that, taught Sunday school and helped. And we used to go visiting, to the Eskimo people. We'd go and visit and counsel and this kind of thing.
Were they welcoming, or did they dismiss outsiders? Or
we were very, very welcomed very well in Nome. Loved those people. And fellowshiped with them all the time and everything like that. It was a pretty good sized church.
Were most of the people in the church native or white?
Most of them were Eskimo. Yeah.
So many had converted or became Christian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They loved the Lord. While there, my son was born in '61, and when he was just a few months old, we were called to go to Valdez. In the process, a gentleman from the Philippines that lived there he was American, but he was a Filipino, and he had 3 children. His wife was Eskimo, and she had passed away. And he asked my husband, when he knew he was dying, if he would take care of the kids. They were 11, 12, and 13, I think. And so we took those 3 Eskimo kids to Valdez with us. And there was a children's home right there next to the church in Valdez. And we put them in there because we didn't have enough room in the parsonage. And as we worked there, my husband had to find a job because the church was small and not enough salary. And so he worked on the docks. He did a lot of driving of the things that carry the luggage and stuff off of the ships, you know, the cargo and everything, and storing it in the warehouses. There were 4 or 5 big warehouses down there. And he did that. And in March of 1964, we had the earthquake, 9.2. And he was on the dock at that time. It happened about 5:30 in the evening. And he was getting ready to come home, and he lost his life. They never found anybody that went down on that dock. And there were about 30 people. And they just opened up underneath and everything fell in. And so here I was at home, of course, sitting there waiting for the house to stop shaking. And didn't realize, you know, I thought, well, he had, you know, he'd escaped or whatever, you know, but somebody came by and took us out to a house about 10 miles out of Valdez, and we sat there most of the night, along with a lot of the people. They had a mental hospital, and they brought a lot of the mental people out, and we sat there and waited until finally one of the members of our church came in and told me that he was gone. And so Leland was 2 and Jan was 6. And anyway, that was a hard time. But we made it.
How?
Well, it turned out that there was a lawyer, can't think of his name now, but he took care of everything for us, notified Social Security, he notified all the necessary things, he took care of everything for us. And I had a life insurance policy. It seems like it was not very big, about $10,000. And so I came up here to Fairbanks. I don't remember why, but we drove up here, and I met the people who started KJNP.
Where we are right now?
Yeah, the Nelsons. And he was looking for some earnest money. They were trying to buy a radio station in Fairbanks. I said, well, I've got this $10,000. I don't need it right now. I'll loan it to you. So I did.
Wow, you loaned him the $10,000 you had that you really needed.
Well, I really didn't need it.
Not at the moment, but it was all you had for savings, I'm guessing.
Yeah. But I did that, and anyway, the Lord supplied everything.
Did you feel you were moved or told, directed to loan him that money?
Pardon?
Did you feel you were directed
to
loan him that money?
I did. Sat right there in the man who had flown us over to Nome. We were in his home and talking, you know. And so I took, and then a few weeks later we made the arrangements, and they got the money. Well, the deal fell through. Somebody else bought that radio station.
When you thought, I'm going to loan him this money we have, did you think, oh, this is not a good idea because this is for my children, and if it doesn't work out and he can't pay me back, then what do we have? Did you have any worries?
I never thought of it. You see, my trust is in the Lord, and I knew the Lord would take care of it. If I didn't get it back, I did, but it was, several years, and the Lord supplied. I mean.
Oh, so when the deal fell through, he kept the money?
Yeah, he kept the money, and he used it to get started here, and I was all for it. I'd always been a radio person. And I was for it, and I told him, well, if you need somebody to write letters or do whatever, you know, because I'd been the secretary and everything. And I came here.
When you said you felt called to go to Nome or to go to Valdez or to loan the $10,000, can you describe that feeling?
You know, to me, it's a natural thing. It's not anything unusual. It isn't any big wild dream or anything like that. It's just a natural thing because all my life, I was saved when I was 9 years old. And all my life I've depended on the leading of the Lord.
Do you remember that when you were 9?
Oh, yes, I do.
Can you describe that?
Well, we went to a missionary to Africa. And you know, when I was young, I used to think I'm going to go to Africa as a missionary. Instead, it turned out to be Alaska. Anyway.
And where were you then at 9?
In Washington.
State?
Yeah.
Okay.
We lived in Carbonado and Buckley and different around Seattle area.
So so take me through that day. You heard that speaker talk about doing a mission in Africa, and you just felt moved by the story?
I went to the altar and gave my heart to the Lord.
At 9?
Yes, at 9 years old. It made a difference in my life.
You felt different from that day forward? Was it noticeable?
Pardon?
Was it noticeable? Like the difference you felt?
I just knew. You know, it you know, in your heart, you know, if your heart is right, you know. And I knew my heart was right because I gave it to Jesus. And he indwelt me. I went through a lot of things when I was a teenager. I didn't ever do anything that a lot of teenagers do today, or did then even, because I loved the Lord and I wanted to do what he wanted me to do.
Have you had periods of doubt?
No. I never doubted. My folks were good, solid Christians, and they taught me from the Bible. And I never ever felt like going back.
Back?
To you know, to the things of the world. Never. It was just in me. I can't, it's hard to explain, but
It is. And I think a lot of people want a clear explanation because they're confused.
Yeah.
Right? There are as many confused people today as there were when you were little, when you were young. I mean,
yeah.
It's really no different.
Yeah.
Some ways probably better, some ways probably worse.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of people who, I mean, even these days, especially down in Seattle, right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In my hometown or my city of Minneapolis, it's bad.
Yeah.
Just last night, they burned down some restaurants.
You know, it's hard to understand what they're thinking in their minds. You know, what's going to be the consequences of what I'm doing, and they don't stop and think about that. They just let their emotions and their anger and their hatred and everything get a hold of them. And
people have always committed crimes of passion.
Yeah.
Jealous lover, some kind of competition, retaliation. And in this case, there just seems to be some rioting mentality.
Yeah.
Do you kind of see it all as, I don't know, related in some kind of way where it's people who don't have that connection to God?
Yeah. It's hard to understand, you know, because they're not thinking. They're not really thinking about things, except their own passion.
Well, you must have felt extraordinary passion when your husband passed.
Oh yes. That was very hard. And the first thing my little girl said to me was, "Who's going to be our daddy now?" That was hard. Because she was real close to him, you know. He used to take her when he'd go visiting people and, you know. and be with her a lot. And it was hard for her. And she was 10 years old, or not 10 years old even, 6 years old. But anyway, it was hard. It wasn't an easy thing, but you know, God is our sustainer. He's the only one. He keeps us, and He's kept me here.
What was it like? You're a human being, so you're not an angel. You know, you're a human being.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, you know, and we're all as emotional as the people who act out in violent ways. We're all emotional people. So did you have to just let your emotions pass through you, your grief, your anger?
I turned it all over to the Lord because He was the only one that I could go to. You know, that's what I did, and I just gave it to the Lord and said, Lord, you know what's happening. You know, it might not be easy, and it's hard, you know, with 2 little kids and everything, but He took care of us. He did. Took care of us, and He brought us here, and we've been here ever since.
I just think most women in that situation would think, how am I going to feed my kids?
Yeah. You know, I never worried about that. It always seemed to be something there to take care of everything.
Have you considered yourself fortunate for having such faith?
Well, I'm fortunate for having the Lord I've got. And He's the one who's kept me all these years. And I've had times when there were bumps and times when there weren't. You know, just one of those things.
God is there for everybody.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yep.
You've maintained, though, a relationship that
Yeah.
most struggle with.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so clear to me how your faith has allowed you to endure very difficult times.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it seem obvious why one should have faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why do you think so many struggle with that or refuse it?
I don't know, because it's the safest thing to do. If you've got faith in the Lord, you're gonna succeed, even though you might have some fall downs. A lot of people are so independent; you know, they're serious about things.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord knows, and if they're pliable, if they recognize the fact that there's a God in heaven and that He is watching over us, then he can have faith to believe that He's going to take care of everything.
Do you think Satan has influence?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I've known a lot of Satan influenced people, and I don't know why want to give their lives over to something like that.
So talk to me about, you know, the world and how you've seen it change since you were young up till today.
Oh, definitely.
And how you feel about it moving. Do you have grandkids?
Pardon?
Do you have grandkids?
Oh, yeah. I have 3 grandsons and a great-grandson.
Do you feel safe or confident or comfortable with the world they're growing up in?
No,
or do you
I'm
think it's
not.
getting worse
well,
or
the
better?
3 boys are grown-ups, and I'm not happy with, you know, what they've had to go through and everything. But the Lord knows about it, and I pray for them every day. And my daughter, she lives in Anchorage, And I'm concerned about them, because there's so many temptations and things that come your way. There's so many. It boggles my mind because we didn't have those temptations when I was young. It's harder now than it was when I was young.
Hmm.
'Cause,
Even though we have more technology and there's more,
yeah,
I guess, wealth and
I think
development.
the technology is part of the problem. And people know too much. They're not innocent anymore, I'll put it that way.
Do you think the world is not a good place to be in anymore?
Well,
Or people need to be saved?
people need to be saved, and then it'll be in a good place for them, but only if they give their lives to the Lord.